Welcome to Keeping Score. I'm Rick Horrow. Each week we bring you insights from the playmakers, deal makers, and rule makers in the world of sports. I'll give you my take on some of the items of the week using my 30 years of experience doing deals for teams, leagues, and players in the $750 billion business of sports. Plus, we'll talk with a central figure in the sports world. The views expressed in this podcast are my own and do not represent the views of Reuters. Let's get started. $2,788, the price of the cheapest Super Bowl 50 ticket we can find online the Wednesday before the game. That's on vividseats.com. The highest, a spot in a suite, will run you $260,000 on StubHub. Some are paying as much as $6,000 just to be near the game. Fans from Charlotte and Denver get to stay at one of their team's hotels for that amount. Hope they get at least a few autographs or photos with their favorite players in the lobby. While the game takes center stage, the highlight for many are the commercials, which cost about $5 million for 30 seconds of airtime on CBS this year. Big brands like Anheuser-Busch and Toyota are taking part, as well as smaller companies like SoFi, a student loan company. Google's YouTube tapping into the interest in the ads with its Ad Blitz platform. Fans can vote for their favorite spots before the game. And last year, people watched the equivalent of 1,600 years of Super Bowl ads on YouTube, and nearly 40% of that viewing time actually occurred before the game itself. Another 300,000 hours of ads were watched during the game. One brand taking an unusual approach for its Super Bowl campaign is Nestle's Butterfinger Candy. It plans to cover up to $50,000 in excessive celebration fines levied against NFL players through Super Bowl 50 as part of its Bolder Than Bold Super Bowl campaign, according to Adweek.com. Former NFL receiver Terrell Owens, largely known for his planned excessive celebrations, and comedian Billy Eichner were selected to make this announcement on behalf of Butterfinger. Owens and Eichner were seen on the streets of New York City asking people to show off their boldest end zone celebrations in exchange for a Butterfinger bar. Of course they did. For more on the Super Bowl and the National Football League, I talked with Paul Tagliabue, who served as commissioner of the NFL from 1989 to 2006. The interview recorded by CSN Bay Area. Joining us now, lawyer extraordinaire, good friend, commissioner of the NFL for 17 years, Paul Tagliabue. Thanks for being with us.
Doing very well, thank you.
Congratulations, by the way, first, for your appointment to the Knight Commission on Intercollegiate Athletics. Obviously, a big honor that you should be very proud of.
Well, it's an important thing that they're addressing college sports and academics, so I'm pleased to be part of it.
So I'm walking through the NFL Experience yesterday, by the way, one of your creations, and I stumble on the Paul Tagliabue wing of the Hall of Fame exhibit. Did you know you have a wing named after you?
No, but I'm glad to know it's there. I hope it's for kids.
The revenue, the stability, the labor piece, all very important to the history and growth of the NFL. Tell us what you're personally most proud of.
Well, I think it would be the agreement with the Players Association that brought stability and brought a good, productive relationship for the game, after 10 years of combat during the 80s.
All right, my friend, you have a magic wand. You can reverse anything you did during your tenure. What, in hindsight, might you have done differently?
Well, I think we would have kept more teams where they were. We would have had a little less team movement. You're still seeing the aftermath of the Raiders and Rams moving out of L.A. with the recent decision, for the Rams to go back to the L.A. area. So I think if we didn't anticipate an issue, it was that issue. We should have been ahead of the curve, not behind it.
You've had so many accomplishments. Tell us specifically what was the hardest to do. Leading Georgetown in scoring and rebounding when you were their top center in 1961, promoting and sustaining labor peace, or getting your 32 bosses, the owners, to agree on anything.
Well, I think the hardest thing is to, strike the right balance between tradition and change, continuity and change, tradition and innovation. Those things those are the difficult issues, and that's one of the issues we had with the Super Bowl. How much should it change? How much should it remain the same? But I think when you have something as successful for so long as the NFL, you have to be open to innovation, but you can't throw away the traditions that make it great.
All right, let's segue into the Super Bowl specifically. 1989, first Super Bowl season with you as a commissioner. Reflect back on what it was like then and how it's changed now.
Well, I think coming out of the decade of the 80s, the Super Bowl had suffered, as had a number of things, from the strike in 82, the players' strike in 82, which had canceled, I think, 7 games, the replacement game, so-called, in 1987. It was a period of instability. There was a lot of litigation. And, Pete Rozelle was the first to tell me that they'd lost some focus on the game itself, and that included the Super Bowl. So we had to understand that the Super Bowl is just a piece of a larger, what I call an ecosystem. It's one piece of a big puzzle. We had to get a lot of the pieces together in a new way, and that's what we did.
Super Bowls are all about defining moments in America's culture. Choose one. Was it 91 after the Iraq War when you chose to play in Tampa? Was it 93 when you moved the game from Phoenix to Pasadena over the Martin Luther King holiday issue? Or was it the wardrobe malfunction or a combination?
It was a combination of all those games, plus the game after 9/11, where the Patriots, where we had to move the game in New Orleans and the Patriots won. Or it was another game involving New Orleans, the Saints win in 2010, which showed that the city of New Orleans was back after Hurricane Katrina. So there were lots of great moments of the Super Bowl in my 17 years and many years before that.
When you took over for Pete Rozelle in 1989, did you ever think that the cost of a ticket would be $14 grand a seat and that over 1.5 million workers would call in sick the day after the Super Bowl? You created a monster.
Well, I think that most of all the players and the coaches create the monster because they're the ones who create the extraordinary entertainment that the Super Bowl is. It's the greatest show on earth, and it seems like the last 10, 15 years have been phenomenal in terms of the competitiveness of the games and the upsets, like the Giants win over the Patriots if the Patriots went undefeated. So it's the drama of the game and the talent of the players that account for the $13,000 ticket.
You talk about the game domestically, but what about the growth of the international game? And the Super Bowl is the tip of the spear around Europe, Africa, Asia, everywhere. Define where NFL International is going.
Well, I think that's been very successful in London, obviously, and I think it can be successful in other parts of Europe as well, including Germany, first and foremost. I think Mexico is an area where the league has already got a great following. And, I was in New Zealand and Australia for 2 weeks, just got back. And I was amazed. The last hotel I stayed at in New Zealand, the guy who was showing me around the city was a huge NFL fan. And he talked more about the Super Bowl than I have in the last 6 months because he was naming the MVP from most of the games of the last 10 or 15 years. This was a fellow who had grown up in the Polynesian Islands and knew all about some of those great players from Samoa. But he knew just as much about the Super Bowl MVPs like Tom Brady and Peyton Manning.
We know how big the Super Bowl is. How much bigger can it get? Is it too big now, and is it growing to be too big?
Well, I don't think it's gotten too big. I think the nation gets bigger and bigger. We have almost 350 million people now. That's a lot more than we had when the Super Bowl I was played. And the audience, as I said, it's not just about sports. It's about life. It's about upsets and it's about surprises. But most of all, it's about competing at an extraordinary level and succeeding. So I don't think it can get too big. The key is to make sure that the focus remains on the game, and that's what Roger Goodell and the others have done so well in recent years.
Let's talk about your trip to Super Bowl venue every year. Get there 8 days, 9 days earlier. Your staff basically has all the work done. Do you see your trip as a vacation, a coronation, or a week of crisis management?
Well, I tried to view it as a week of community engagement. I thought that what the community expects, what the fans expect, is for the commissioner and other league representatives to be involved in the host city. The host city puts so much energy, effort, so many resources, so much volunteerism into the game. I used to feel that my main responsibility Super Bowl week was to pay attention to the local fans, the local volunteer leaders, and local community organizations. And we did that for all 17 years that I was commissioner.
You get to a town, what's the one thing you most worried about every single year?
Well, you worry in this environment about security. You worry about injuries to the players. You worry about the weather. But I think mostly today it's about the health and safety of the players and the health and safety of the fans, which translates itself to security.
Super Bowl 50 only comes along once. Define the special legacy and nature of Super Bowl 50 for the Bay Area and the league.
Well, it's a great opportunity to celebrate something that is an annual. It is a midwinter national holiday, but just as important, it is the crowning moment of extraordinary athletic competition. And, there was a great game in San Francisco. I was there in Stanford Stadium. And the 49ers, of course, were one of the teams that defined the 50 years of Super Bowl history. So for the 49ers in the Bay Area to host this game, I think makes a lot of sense. And I think they'll do a fabulous job as hosts.
Where are you watching the game?
I'm watching it at home in Washington, D.C.
Who's going to win?
Can't tell you that. I was at the last one with Denver and Seattle, and I thought it was going to be a close game. It turned out that it wasn't, but I think this one will be. But I can't tell you who's going to win. It's the new fabulous quarterback against the older fabulous quarterback, and but it turns on so much other than the quarterbacks, and we saw that in the conference championship games. The defenses are obviously critical. But I'll leave the picking the winners to the sports writers who know more about football than I do.
Ambassador, statesman, great lawyer, friend, defined the NFL for 17 years, and obviously, based on that answer, a master politician. Paul Tagliabue, thanks for stopping by.
Thanks for listening to this edition of Keeping Score. I'm Rick Horrow. The producer of the show is Alex Cohen. Audio producer, Adam Wiesen. Technical assistance provided by Jamie Weber, Tanner Simpkins, and Carlos Waddick. The executive editor of Reuters Digital, Dan Colarusso.